Hello, everyone. Chuck Whetstone coming to you from Oklahoma City. Today's podcast is about a great song called Precious Lord, Take My Hand, written by Thomas A. Dorsey. And I'd like to share this song story with you and share the song with you here in just a moment. This podcast is brought to you by heritagesongs.com, and you'll see the link below here and also at the end of this video. So thank you for supporting me, and I appreciate that. When you purchase my books and my CDs, it helps me continue this podcast each week. So today's song, Thomas A. Dorsey. Now, don't confuse him with the great swing band leader from the 30s and 40s, Mr. Tommy Dorsey, who played trombone. It's not the same guy. So let's get right into it. He was born 1899 and he passed away in 1993, lived a wonderful long life. Thomas A. Dorsey is considered the father of gospel music. Now, can you imagine that? Now, in my mind, I thought gospel music has been around forever and ever. Well, before what we have in music called gospel music, before that was the Negro spirituals were the ones that were mostly sung and kept around in the churches. And of course, in the Protestant churches, you had Protestant hymns and evangelical hymns. And then in the cultural world of music, we have blues and jazz being developed in the United States. And with that influence, this is where Thomas A. Dorsey began his career. He began playing jazz music in Chicago. And that ultimately led to him using that style of music in gospel music. And that's why they call him the father of gospel music. So he was born in Georgia, grew up in Atlanta, and his family moved to Chicago in 1915. His father was a Baptist minister and his mother taught piano. So Thomas learned several instruments, I understand. And while he was in Chicago, he studied at the Chicago College of Composition and Arranging. He began playing jazz music under various names, including Georgia Tom Dorsey. And he was a very famous guy playing the piano and had some titles that were kind of risque, and I'm not going to talk about those right now. You can look them up yourself. But he is credited to have written over 1,000 songs. Now, the internet is so interesting because I saw one reference that he'd written 200 gospel songs. One was 300 gospel songs. In the documentary that I saw today about Thomas A. Dorsey, he had written like 500 gospel songs. Who knows? I have no clue. But I know that he's written some very important songs. And the one we're talking about today is one of the best, most famous that he's ever done. So he left jazz. He played for some very famous people. And he left jazz and moved into the gospel music in 1928 when he really had a conversion experience. So his song, Precious Lord, Take My Hand, is written out of tragedy that took place in his life. Now, as he got into gospel music, he was playing revivals and conventions and things that were held, and people loved to hear him play and sing. And so he tells his own story about how this song came to be. And let me read it for you real quickly. It's in his own words, basically. Back in 1932, I was 32 years old, and he was a new husband, married to Nettie, his wife. They were living in a little apartment on Chicago's south side. He said one hot August afternoon, he was invited down to St. Louis to sing. He said they kept pestering him, so to speak, wanting him to come down. So he left, even though Nettie was in her last month of pregnancy with her first child. So he goes down to St. Louis. He's down there singing and playing, and then he said the crowd called on me to sing again and again. Now, that's a wonderful experience, but it meant he wasn't going home very soon. So he said when he finally sat down, a messenger brought him a Western Union telegram, and it said in the telegram, and now here again on the internet, I've seen two discrepancies. One telegram said that your wife is sick, hurry home. The other telegram said your wife has just died. So I don't know which one is correct. But anyway, eventually his wife did die either that day or she had died. So he said when he got back to Chicago, he learned that Nettie had given birth to a baby boy. And so he was torn between grief and joy, but that later on, that baby died as well. It was healthy for just a short time, and then he died. And it would have been Thomas Dorsey III, I believe. So he buried Nettie and the little boy together in the same casket, and then he said he fell apart. And guess, emotionally, he did. He just went through a terrible time, and he felt like God had left him alone and had done him a great injustice. He didn't take care of his wife and his little boy, and so Thomas said he didn't want to serve him anymore. He wanted to go back to playing jazz music and not do any more gospel songs. So he had a dark moment. And during that time, in his grief, it says, everyone was kind to me, especially a friend, Professor Fry, who seemed to know what I needed. It said, on the following Saturday evening, he took me up to Malone's Poor Old College and a neighborhood music school. It was quiet. The late evening sun crept through the curtained windows. I sat down at the piano, and my hands began to browse over the keys. So Thomas took consolation in his grief through music, like many of us do. And that's where we also go for our joys and other things. But as Thomas gravitated to the tune called Maitland, it is a tune that George Allen, who was 1812 to 1877. George Allen had written the tune Maitland and used the text, must Jesus bear the cross alone? So Thomas gravitated to this melody and added his own arrangement and his own words. And so ever since this time, that song has been sung. And because of the influence of Thomas A. Dorsey, the father of gospel music, he paved the way using this combination of jazz, blues, and Negro spirituals, and made it a new form, really, gospel music. He opened the door for people like Mahalia Jackson, Rosetta Tharpe, Aretha Franklin. Who else? He opened the door for Andre Crouch, who I grew up listening to and watched on the Johnny Carson show in the 70s. Just great black performers. And so these guys had a door open for them because of Thomas A. Dorsey. So this song has been recorded by many, many people. One of the most famous was, of course, Mahalia Jackson and Elvis Presley. So many people have recorded it. And it's also been included in so many church hymnals and gospel music books. One of his other famous songs that I really like, particularly myself, that Elvis recorded and others, is a song called Peace in the Valley. I just think it's a wonderful song. So there's also a link on this page to where Georgia Tom Dorsey was being inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame in 2018. So if you'd like to see that for more information, you can. And then there's another link I put at the bottom of this podcast as well that goes to a great documentary about the life of Thomas A. Dorsey. It tells you a bunch more that I can cover on this little short podcast today. So I encourage you to check that link out as well. It's about 25 minutes, but you get to see the man sing, you get to see the man tell his story a bit, and also working with people. And because he worked with so many singers and choirs, we have a great heritage through this man called Thomas A. Dorsey, the father of gospel music, who has paved the way for even people like me to play songs that might have a little blues or jazz influence in it and make it more accessible to the masses and to people that like that style of music. And so that's where I hang my hat with Thomas A. Dorsey, combining jazz, blues, and great gospel music. So enjoy the rest of this podcast. I'm going to try to sing and play that song for you right now. Yeah. Precious Lord, Take My Hand, written at a time of grief, but really tells where the man stood, and he was just holding out to God and say, hey, help me out here. I'm in deep turmoil. Can you help me out? So thank you for watching this podcast today. I look forward to coming to you next Friday with another podcast, another song. Until then, Chuck Whetstone signing out. Bye-bye. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call, hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When the darkness appears and the night draws near, and the day is past and gone, at the river I stand, guide my feet, hold my hand, take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Oh, take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord.